Everyone dreams of moving to Destin, Florida, and can you blame them? With our emerald waters and that just powder white sand that seems to just sift through your toes and the sunshine year round, it's no wonder that people want to move here. But if you've ever wondered what life's really like once the vacation ends and you're actually living here full time, then this is the video that you absolutely need to see. See, Destin, it's absolutely beautiful. There's no doubt about that. But living here isn't always easy. It definitely comes with its perks, which are pretty obvious. And then it kind of has some downfalls. And some of these downfalls are things that people don't tell you. And that's exactly what I'm going to be going over today. I want to make sure that you guys are making the best decision whenever you're moving down to the Destin, Florida area. So by the end of today's video, you will know the real trade-offs, the cost, the culture, and whether Destin living is truly right for you. What's going on? My name is Mongo with the Original Life on the Emerald Coast YouTube channel, and we showcase absolutely everything there has to do with the entire Emerald Coast from Pensacola to Panama City Beach and everything in between. The first reality that I want to go over with you guys is the beach dream, the actual dream, versus the daily reality that we deal with as locals here. Destin's beaches are undeniably beautiful, but getting access to these beaches are not as easy as the postcards make it seem. You know, we get a lot of calls for people wanting to move to the Destin, Florida area, and by the way, we absolutely love that. Keep them coming. But one of the things that we hear quite often is that people want the walk out their door with a cup of coffee to the beach lifestyle. And it's kind of long, but that's essentially what people are telling us. Hey, I want to be able to sip my morning coffee right in the beautiful sands of Destin. Totally get it. And it's 100% doable, but there might be some give and takes to that. And the reality here is, although being on the beach for your coffee is 100% doable and actually pretty easy in a lot of areas, it's not always that cut and dry depending on where you decide to live. You know, a lot of these public beach access points will start filling up at about 9 a.m. during tourist season. And so it's a little bit harder to find parking if you're not able to walk right to the beach. And then on top of that, the public beach access points are limited in their parking, so they fill up pretty quickly. And some of them even charge $20 to $30 for you to park there. So for locals, getting charged to park in a place that they already live would drive us absolutely nuts. So the locals start figuring out some of the lesser known beach access points. I'm talking about secret spoilers here: June White Decker, James Lee Beach, and beach access 4, 5, and 6 on Okaloosa Island if you're going to tread out that far. Then, of course, there are smaller neighborhoods that have beach access points that, well, if you purchase in that area or rent in that area, then you'll have access to those beaches as well. But here's the scoop. Once you become a local down here, going to the beach isn't necessarily a daily occurrence as much anymore. And we still kind of plan it out and make it an event. We're checking to see when we're going out there. We're either going early mornings, we're going a little bit later in the afternoon once all the crowds start dying down. This way we can get parking, we're not having to pay for it, we're able to go at our times and not have the beaches be as packed. And then, of course, us locals, we get to enjoy a small window from September to February every year where that beach is completely ours. Now, it comes with its cons because it's not going to be as warm out there as a beach day should be in order to feel like you're at the beach. In fact, there'll be a couple of months there where it's actually fairly cold. But we still get those months completely to ourselves, and you have long stretches of open beach 100% to yourself. At the end of the day, the locals start reclaiming the water, the roads, and all of the great restaurants and activities in the area. And funny enough, that's when you start recognizing your neighbors again and recognizing the dogs that are walking around the neighborhood. Because at the end of the day, Destin packs with people during tourist season. In fact, we go up to almost 100,000 people. That's generally when the fire marshal has to say, hey guys, like, we got to stop bringing people in because it's too many people packed in this one little area. That's a real thing, by the way. And Destin is only a town of under 14,000. So when you really think about it, as soon as the tourism goes away, it instantly turns into a small town. I always think this is funny because I think of Destin as this like really big hoppin', poppin' area, even as a local myself. And then I think about one of the towns that I grew up in, the place that I graduated high school at. I moved around a lot, but the place that I graduated high school at only had like 20,000 people. And it is they literally call it a podunk town. That's like a name for it, right? We've all heard that, a podunk town at 20,000, and Destin's only 14. So it's a lot smaller than most people think. So yes, the whole point of this is you will live by the beach and you'll have that beach access. It'll be really easy to get to most of the time. You just have to learn the little tricks that us locals start learning, but don't worry, that happens pretty quick. But as we start shifting our conversation from dreaming to reality, we get into our reality number 2, and that's the real cost of living. Now, if you guys have been watching my channel for any period of time, you know that I go over cost of living quite often. I don't want anybody to be surprised when they move down here. It absolutely breaks my heart to see somebody move down here, want to live the dream, and then they're cash strapped or something like that. So I want a realistic idea of what cost of living is. So let's go over a couple of different things. When we're talking about cost of living as a whole, the biggest expense that we're going to have to worry about is our housing. That is going to be by far the largest expense. So I want to make a couple of different comparisons because we get a lot of phone calls of people wanting to move into Destin, Florida itself, like the actual city itself, whereas one of the suburbs around it might be a better option. And let's walk through exactly why. So in Destin, the median price point is around $650,000, depending on which month you look at the data, at least for the last couple of months, 6 months or so. And with that, condos, you can definitely get under 650 very easily. Remember, that's just the average. In fact, you can get in at about 300. If you're willing to live in a real small condo, you can get in even cheaper than that. But at the end of the day, 650 is the median, and that's going to be median, which means a lot of people that are going to be underneath that are going to need to be in condos in order to live here. And although the price tag on the condo might seem a little bit better, let's walk through the numbers of exactly why it might actually be more expensive to go through that. So let's start with a condo at 480 Scenic Gulf right here in Destin. This is located on Holiday Isle, which is a very popular area for condos. And there's also some single family homes and townhomes there as well, but it is a lot of condos. It's located right off of the harbor. So let's walk through the numbers on this particular condo and compare it to a property twice as big just north of Destin in Niceville. So we'll put up a little graphic up on the screen and kind of compare these side by side. The condo at 480 Gulf Shore is 895 square feet. It is a 2-bed, 2-bath on the 4th floor, and it's got beach views all around. It's located right in the center of Holiday Isle, so it doesn't have perfect views all around, and it's not waterfront. You're going to have to walk to get to the water, but there are plenty of views to be had from this condo. And it's currently listed at $499,000. These are real properties we're going over, by the way. I kind of picked 2 at random. I wanted to be in similar price points and just compare them together. And I'll explain why here in a minute. Just bear with me. It's got an HOA fee of $1,276. Now it's actually paid out per quarter, but for ease of math purposes, I'm breaking all of these numbers down into monthly numbers. That would be $142 a month for insurance. Now the insurance on a condo typically is a little bit lower because you really only generally need an HO3 or an HO6 policy, which for all intents and purposes is essentially content insurance. And sometimes you got to protect the drywall and appliances, things like that, obviously, but you're protecting what's inside the unit, so your insurance tends to be a lot lower. That's a good thing for a condo, but some of the other costs start mitigating it, such as taxes. Taxes on a Holiday Isle are going to be considerably more expensive than over there in Niceville on the property we're about to compare to. So they're sitting at $415 a month for this condo. Now, utilities, big bonus here for condos is that you generally don't have to pay all of your utilities. A lot of that is wrapped into your HOA fee. But you will still generally have to pay electric, and in a lot of condos, you'll also have to pay for any additional services you want, cable and internet being the 2 most popular. Now, I didn't look in this condo to see if it provided that, but I did go through and look at the actual numbers of the utilities for this unit, and it was averaging $110 a month for the last year. So that means your total payment on this condo is $4,361 per month. And there is a high potential for special assessments. A lot of people don't know this with condos, but at any point they can say, we don't have enough money and we need to resurface the building. Everybody in here has to pay $3,000 or 90. That's a real number. Now, let's head a little bit north into Niceville. You're about 10 to 15 minutes further away from the beach, so you're going to lose out on that advantage, and you're definitely not going to have the views on this single-family home, but let's walk through some of the perks of this property. Now, the property I chose was right in the heart of Niceville, and it was 321 St. Andrew Street. It's currently on the market for $489,000, so about $10,000 cheaper. It's 1,857 square feet, so it's over double, not by much, but basically 2x the size with 4 beds and 2 baths on a single floor. It is a ranch-style pool home. which means you've got the private pool. You're kind of omitting the great views and the quick beach access for the private pool, which is also a really big benefit in Florida. I never thought I'd be a pool person, but I do own one, and I absolutely love it. The 4 times I get in it per year. All right, let's break down the numbers. $489,000 is the purchase price at 20% down using current interest rates. It's about $2,370. I actually forgot to put that number in for the condo, but it's going to be roughly the same. It's $10,000 more, so it might be about $50 more per month. But the insurance. This is a single family home, which means the insurance is going to be a little bit higher. This is also a ranch style home, which means it was built in either the 70s or the 80s. I don't have the paper in front of me to know the exact year, but it is an older property. So the insurance tends to lean a little bit higher, and they did have an insurance quote in there for us for $416 a month. Oof, yikes. Big bonus condo for sitting at $142 a month. So far, it's looking like the condo might be a little bit cheaper. But then we get into the taxes, and the taxes here are only $366 per month versus $415. Not huge, but definitely noticeable, about $50 right there. And then utilities are going to be a lot higher in a single family home because you're paying electric, water, sewer, trash, gas if you've got it. And then, of course, this one also included internet because most households are going to have internet, whereas the one in the condo, I wasn't sure if they provided internet. I just didn't look that far into it. But the utilities on this property would be about $490 a month. And I believe that also included pool maintenance, which was $150 a month. So you can kind of backtrack from there if you decide to manage your own pool. But at the end of the day, that makes your total essential payment, and this is essential because, the utilities aren't technically the payment, but that would make your total monthly all-in cost at around $3,642. That's $719 less per month to be in a house twice as big, but you're going to have an extra 15-minute drive to get to the water. That's the trade-off. So when we're talking a little bit later about some of the other trade-offs that you might have to make, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Exact same size property or same price property. Well, not exact. They're $10,000 different, but a $700 difference in payment. And that is exactly why we're always telling you guys, reach out a little bit early. We've got a whole process here. We want to figure out exactly what you want. The lifestyles in these two places are going to be different. The distance to the beach is different. The daily living is going to be completely different. We need to narrow this down, and we need to make sure that it's all within your budget, because as you can see here, if you did the random math of, hey, what's it going to cost to live in a single family home in the area? And mind you, this isn't mortgage payment in general because I'm adding utilities and stuff, but my all-in cost is going to be quite a bit different between these two properties. And most of it's that HOA, but a lot of times it could be taxes and insurance just making the big difference, especially if you're counting house to house. So if you had already planned on roughly $3,500 per year, or $3,000 per year plus utilities, and then you decide, hey, let's do the condo life, and didn't calculate it properly, you can find yourself in kind of a bad spot pretty quickly. And especially if your agent isn't doing the work ahead of time and letting you know what that payment's going to look like up front, or your loan officer should also be able to do the same thing. That is one thing that we'll do for you. We'll calculate all costs and all of that good stuff. That's all part of the process, but just be careful is my point, in case you're not calling us. So I hear a lot about property taxes and insurance. I don't want to talk about those briefly because they're going to be part of this reality of cost of living. At the end of the day, our insurance here in Florida is actually cheaper than the national average, especially if you homestead the property. Homesteading your property will give you a discount in your taxes, but it will also, the big thing that it does, is it will prevent the government from raising your taxes more than 3%, whereas the normal cap is 10%. So if you're not homesteaded and somebody wants a little extra tax money, they can definitely do it. Now, is this going to be an issue in the future? I don't know. Our governor is currently talking about completely eliminating taxes for homestead properties. That would make your homestead taxes zero, which in the case of both of these properties would save approximately $400 per month. And a lot of the revenue is going to be coming in from, the economy through the tourism industry. And that's why we're able to do things like that here in Florida. So, hopefully maybe that'll pass. But then we go on to insurance. Insurance seems to be the bane of all existence right now when people are talking about moving to Florida. We're hearing it all the time. Oh, I heard Florida's insurance rates are going through the roof. I just gave a couple of examples of insurance rates of $416 a month. That's pretty high for 1970. 70s home versus $142 per month for a condo. So here's the scoop at the end of the day. Post 2024, there was a hurricane reform. Essentially, we had too many hurricanes hit us, and the insurance companies started scattering the state. Okay, and a lot of that's because we also have a government funding insurance. The name's escaping me right now. Citizens insurance, and almost everybody goes with Citizens because they're beating the rates of everybody. And so we needed to do something about that. So the Citizens Insurance started backing off, and they basically said, we're going to raise our prices 20% per year for the next 5 years so that we can bring more competition in that will help drive these prices back down. Funny thing about this is I hear my friends in South Florida talk about this all the time because they're actually going through it. But here in the Panhandle, we're not really seeing that. We saw a slight rise. We saw nothing like what South Florida did at all. It's not even comparable. So at the end of the day, it's good to be looking at each individual property in each area to make sure that the insurance costs make sense for you. And if that's going to make or break it, then we need to move on to a different property. One of the other things with insurance that we need to discuss is flood zones and flood insurance in general. Now, we'll throw up a map real quick of the flood zones in Destin. As you can see, most of it's just around the edges. Everything else in that center area is flood zone X. Now, flood zone X is still technically a flood zone because we're in a flood zone state. So the entire state is required to be in at least X. What that means here in Florida is X means no flood insurance needed. I don't hold it on any of mine, including my rental properties and things like that. Now, I'm not saying you don't need to. In fact, it's a pretty good safety bet to do because it's only $350 to $450 per year if you're sitting in a non-flood zone area, or flood zone X technically. Whereas in something like an AE flood zone, which is a little bit higher, it might be $2,000 to $4,000 per year to hold it. And if you've got a mortgage on your property, you're actually required to hold it. And so this may change your payment quite a bit. And if you're worried about flood, this is something you might want to consider. At $400 per year on average, I think holding flood insurance is probably a pretty good idea. In fact, I'll give you a quick story. The first property I ever bought had a French drain in the neighborhood, and apparently wasn't built in right. We had a pretty big rain in 2015, something like that, 16, something like that. It rained for like 3 days straight, like not kidding, 3 days, and it just kept going. And that French drain failed and it started to fill up. And luckily, I was on kind of the higher end of the street, but there were about a dozen houses on my street that got messed up in an area that never should have flooded. So that $400 per year, well, that might be a good thing to do so that you can protect yourself in this situation. Some of the other things you can do to make sure that your insurance cost is lower is either buy new construction. So great incentives on new construction, by the way. I'll be talking about that here in just a few minutes as well. But also getting metal roofs and hurricane protection all over your house. Things like fabric shield or even plywood boards to cover up your windows, making sure that the overall wind mitigation of your property is strong. At the end of the day, cost of living is going to change quite a bit depending on where you decide to buy. So that leads us into our next reality where we're going to talk about traffic, commutes, and the 98 effect when we're talking about Highway 98, which is the main road that runs east to west, west to east, all through our entire area. It's basically one road to rule them all. And it's going to impact your daily life because if you're living anywhere on the coast, you have to get on 90. You have to. Unless you're staying within your town and you're staying north of it, you're going to end up on 98 at some point. Highway 98 is our lifeline here in the area, but it's also a little bit of our headache. You got to remember, we've got a town of 14,000 that jumps to 80, 90, even 100,000 people practically overnight. So we need to make sure that we've got enough infrastructure for that. And that's going to take a lot of foresight and it's going to require a lot of change. And that's why Highway 98 always has construction going on somewhere on it. In fact, going on a quick trek from, let's say, Okaloosa Island to Miramar Beach, and you just got to pass through Destin, normally about a 25-minute drive. But during peak tourist season, it can take an hour. And if there's an accident or something going on the roads, it could take even longer than that. But there's always a workaround, and us locals have figured that out. And that is we just dodge the traffic and we purposely work our errands around it. So for instance, I've got a chiropractor up in Destin I've got to go to. I know that there are certain times I'm not going up there. I don't even do the afternoons at all if I can help it. If I do the afternoons, I've got to be done around 1 to 2. I want to dodge all of that traffic that's starting to leave the service industry as people are wrapping up their morning jobs or what have you. I want to completely get out of there by then, at least during peak tourist season. So mornings and late evenings are going to be your best bet for dodging the traffic. And then, of course, if you are living north of the city, then you've got the Mid-Bay Bridge to consider. Now, the Mid-Bay Bridge comes with a pro and con, just like everything else. It's easy to get up into Niceville or even Freeport or, heck, even Crestview if you're going up that far. But it's going to cost you $4 every time you want to take it. But I think that's a small price to pay to save the time from having to go out and all the way around Fort Walton Beach and then up into Niceville. It might only save you 20 minutes, but $4 is worth 20 minutes, or $20 is worth $4 in my opinion. But if it's not, you can absolutely go around. And what does Niceville have to offer that Destin doesn't? Well, suburban neighborhoods, number one, phenomenal schools. There's shopping up there. There's a whole community of people that want to live in suburbia, essentially, but also be right next to Destin. Just $4 to cross that bridge and get to the beach anytime you'd like. And you've still got bay access in Niceville as well, so you can go paddleboarding, kayaking, and splashing around in the bay anytime you'd like. As it's no doubt that some of you guys will eventually become locals, I'll give you a little locals hack that I didn't learn for way too long. Use your GPS. I know that you know how to get there. Once you become a local, you know how to get to everywhere, but you want to check the GPS just in case. I didn't figure this out for many years before I was like, okay, this GPS is going to save my butt. So even if you're visiting Destin, you can find some of the nice little workarounds that we do by using your GPS. So throw that on even when, I throw it on almost every day when I'm going home. I hit the button on my little computer thing on my truck just in case, because I've got to deal with traffic from the bases. And so I don't like to go home from like 4:30 or from about 3:30 to about 5:30, give or take. Outside of that, it's easy to get to my place from there. So if the thought of being closer to things like Target and other shopping, but being 10 to 15 minutes away from the beach sounds good to you, then this next reality is going to be one that you enjoy. So reality number 4 is, where do the locals actually live? Everybody visits Destin, but do all the people that work in Destin actually live there? Destin is absolutely stunning. It's beautiful, but it comes at its cost. It's a little bit expensive and it's crowded at times, and it might not always be ideal for all families. That being said, we definitely have a lot of very large neighborhoods here in Destin that do accommodate families, so it is for some people, but it might not be for you. So some of the surrounding towns nearby Destin might be a better option for you. For instance, north of Destin is Niceville and the Blue Water Bay area. Blue Water Bay is just a neighborhood inside of Niceville. I mentioned this already, but Niceville and Blue Water Bay are a little bit more family-oriented. They've got top-rated schools, some of the best schools in our area. Actually, we're always hearing about their schools, and the ratings online are always really good. And you've still got bay access, and it's no wonder why it's known as where Destin sleeps. A lot of the people that are working and living near Destin are actually right here in Niceville. I already kind of mentioned the whole suburban type feel. You want to be surrounded by community and stuff. Well, Niceville is a pretty good option for that. And then, of course, if you're willing to head a little bit east and be even a little bit further away from the beach, although not that much, really about 15 to 20 minutes, you can go into Freeport. And we'll talk about Freeport a little bit more in a second, but it's our fastest growing inland area. By a tremendous margin. It's not even close. Like the place is booming. There's no other way to describe it other than it's booming. And it's booming with new construction primarily. And new construction right now, they're incentivizing, they're trying to appease their shareholders, they're trying to get properties to move. So they are offering some insane incentives. I'm seeing interest rates every once in a while. I'm seeing them 3.99. As the time I'm shooting this, the actual interest rate's about 6.1%. Of course, get with your lender to make sure that you're, making sure that that's accurate. But that's the big difference there. Now, a lot of them are doing 4.99. That's the number I'm seeing a little bit more. But the point is, some of these bigger builders own the title company, the lender, and the builder. And so they can buy down your rate. That's essentially what they're doing for you. And they're offering a lot of other incentives. And it's not just great interest rates either. If you guys watched my video from last week, which go back and watch it, check it out. It's pretty good. It was a little bit shorter because it got cut off because there was a hit and run situation. Anyway, we'll put that link somewhere down in the description if you want to go see that. But it's a new construction townhouse neighborhood. They're only $345,000, and they were offering $20,000 to do whatever you want with. Whatever you want. You want to put in a really cool appliance package, get a cool washer, dryer, and fridge, you can do it. You want to use it to buy down your closing costs, you can absolutely do it. So my point here is, There's a big boom in Freeport of new construction, and they're offering a lot of incentives, and so it makes it very, very enticing. You get better insurance rates, you get a brand new house, it's pretty, and you're getting all these incentives, and it makes it pretty enticing. In fact, if you're curious on what some of these incentives are, you can always reach out to us. All of my contact information will pop up on the screen. You can call, text, email, throw a carrier pigeon at me, however you'd like to get a hold of us, and we can get you some of the incentives just to give you an idea of exactly what they're doing. They do change week over week over week, so keep that in mind. But getting back to Freeport being an option right next to Destin, it's a great option. It's half the price for twice the square footage, and that's a good deal. Of course, you can head west from Destin, go into Fort Walton Beach or the Shalimar area. And here you're going to get a mix of military folks and locals. It's going to be an easier commute to both major military installations here in that area. There's also another one up by Crestview and another one over by Pensacola. We're just filled with military here in our area. As a prior military guy myself, I absolutely love it. But Shalimar and Fort Walton Beach, because of the proximity to two major bases, we've got Eglin up top, we've got Hurlburt Field just to the west of it, and offers strong rental and resale markets, meaning you're almost never going to have an issue selling these. The market still moves. Where in certain parts of our area, the market has completely slowed down. Fort Walton Beach, especially in the rental market too, has not. In fact, I just put up a rental property a couple of days ago, and we've got so much interest. We've got to completely open the doors to people just to have them flood in and start getting the applications. And it's not priced so low that it should be happening like that. It's just because we have a lot of people moving in and out of the area all the time. So for you investors, that's a pretty solid spot to go to. But Freeport's also a close second with the prices that you're getting in new construction. It'll probably last a while until you've got to do a bunch of maintenance, so that could be a pretty good option as well. So let's go ahead and go back to Destin. And the last area we haven't talked about near Destin that a lot of the locals live is the Santa Rosa Beach or North 30A area. And if you go there, it's quiet, it's private, it's hidden, it's wooded. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds. You're getting kind of that privacy with the access to the 30A lifestyle if you wanted to pop down there and see the beauty, the Instagram beauty that is 30A. In fact, I'm reminded of a couple that recently closed with us about 4 or 5 months ago, something like that. They were from Houston, Texas, and they were all about Destin, wanted Destin 100%. They come in, they do the buyer consultation with us. We really dig. We're trying to figure out what the lifestyle is that they're looking for, what kind of vibe they're looking for, what their budget is. We're matching all of these things together. And as we're talking, I'm thinking, I don't know, this is a Niceville person. Like, I'm thinking Blue Water Bay. And so we start talking about it, and I explained kind of the difference. And they kept saying things like, I want this family-friendly atmosphere. I want to be able to go, walking and jogging with the kids, or kids would jog with him every single morning and go on walks in the evening with his mom. So I want the sidewalk streets, all this other stuff. And Destin has them, but in the price point they wanted, it was a little bit difficult. Let's just call it what it is. So eventually they did make the choice to Blue Water Bay, and I actually got a text from them a couple of months after and said that they absolutely love it. They're loving that they go into Destin now. And now they're seeing it for what it is, and they're like, I don't think this would have matched our lifestyle. My point with all of this is exactly why the process is what it is. You guys give us a call. We're going to try to get you in for a consultation, whether it's on Zoom or in person, so that we can actually talk about what you want. We want to match the lifestyle and the budget to make sure that it's all in alignment. I'd hate to help you move to Destin and you wanted something quiet and you didn't want to be near nightlife, and cool, we pick a nice little quiet spot in Destin, we can do that, but it still didn't fit the overall vibe that you're looking for. So I'd rather pair you exactly where you'd like to call home. If that changes down the road, and down the road you decide you want to be near the nightlife or something like that, well, that's something we can talk about too. Here's the truth about it, though. Destin is way more than just the town itself. It is actually all of these surrounding cities, because they make up what Destin is. There's commuters going there to work. They're helping the infrastructure. They're helping the overall tourism industry. Just everything is centered around it. But it pulls from the cities around us. And each one of those cities has its own vibe and its own aura and lifestyle that you might like or might dislike. So that gets us into reality number 5, neighborhood vibes and personalities. So I kind of talked about this a little bit, and I actually had a little bit more to talk about on some of these areas, but I might just skip those. And I want to go with some areas right inside of the heart of Destin itself. So let's start with Crystal Beach. Crystal Beach is most known for its golf cart vibes, its beach cruisers, and just absolutely beautiful homes. It's got public beach access right near it, and it's perfect for retirees and people that are looking for a vacation home and they just want to visit it from time to time, and maybe even Airbnb it and make a little bit of money, or at least hedge their mortgage whenever they're not staying in it. And of course, there are plenty of people that live there full time, so don't let that deter you either. In fact, this is probably one of the best neighborhoods if you really do want that leave my house and walk to the beach with a cup of coffee in my hand lifestyle. Crystal Beach, it's about as good as you can get. Now, if you're looking for a gated golf cart community, a little bit ritzier, completely lined with guards at every gate, big, beautiful towers, all of these things all on one complex's master plan community, then Kelly Plantation will be perfect for you. Heck, this place has everything, including a horse area, horse stables, I guess. I was going to call it a horse farm, but it's not a horse farm, it's horse stables. And it's golf course luxury at its finest. It's perfect for retirees, working professionals that want to have a good, clean community. Just keep in mind you'll need to keep your lawn nice and tidy because they are a stickler for the rules. Now, for those of you that are looking for a little bit more old Florida charm, sort of the older brick homes, single floor, and a lot of times stuff like that, well, then Indian Bayou is a great little neighborhood for you. You'll see a lot of private docks in this area because most of the neighborhood is right along the bay. And this is primarily good for boaters, especially if you want to be on the water side. Now, if you are a boater and you're not on the water side, that might alleviate a little bit of that. You still have to dock your boat up in a marina or something, but it's still a pretty cool neighborhood with some old school Florida charm. Now, for those of you that want a little bit more of a resort style, you want a country club amenities, you want a golf course, you want all the fanciness, well, Regatta Bay might be perfect for you. It's gated, it's a beautiful golf course, beautiful neighborhoods, and the community there is pretty tight as well. Regatta Bay is great for families, particularly families that want walkability. Right here at Regatta Bay, you can literally walk right out of the neighborhood and go straight into the Destin Commons and all of the great shopping there. At the end of the day, the beauty of Destin is that it's not just one thing. It's lots of different options, lots of different vibes and lifestyles. I know we harp on this a lot in our videos, but this area is super unique. I moved about every 2 years of my life. It was prior military. I was a military brat, and then I was military when I was in. I moved a lot. I've never seen an area like this where you can literally choose all sorts of different vibes and lifestyles. So that's why we hit on it so hard, because I think that's the entire, just genius of this area. All right, let's get into reality number 6, which is where we're talking about what everyday life in Destin is looking like for locals. Because a lot of you may have visited as tourists, but it's completely different once you actually live here. The big difference between vacationing here and living here is rhythm. It's the rhythm of how you're doing things. It's the rhythm of how you're going about your day. When you're here on vacation, you're here for a few reasons. I'm going shopping, or I'm going to the beach, I'm going to Crab Island, I'm doing the things. But once you're living here, you've got the daily routines now. You're dropping off kids, you're running groceries, you're running errands, things like that. And weekends might not necessarily be just for hitting the water anymore. It might be more about community now once you're living here full time. I mentioned this before, but remember, 14,000 person population. So it's going to feel like a small town pretty quick. And you'll want to get to know some of the small town areas or kind of the local spots, such as Capriccio's Cafe. It's kind of a local coffee shop here in Destin. And, instead of going to Starbucks, you can support local by going to places like that. And then, of course, we've got some cool little local spots all around the area, too. If you're to head north into Niceville, you're going to have Third Planet Brewing. We've done several videos out there. Huge complex, little small bar inside area, but they've got all this stuff outside. They've got a kids' play area. They've got this whole area with a stage and all this. It's just, there's a lot going out there. They brew their own brews. They've got guest brews coming in. The people there are great. It's food trucks out there every single time that you go. So it's a pretty cool little local spot. Or, of course, you've got Harbor Walk Village, which is a tourist spot during the tourist season, but turns local really, really quickly. In fact, as soon as tourist season's over, you'll start noticing that they're going to be asking for your ID a little bit more, not just because you're getting a drink, maybe you're not, but to see if you're a local, so you get some of those locals discounts. And if you're looking for something a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more chill, head on into Fort Walton Beach to the Boardroom Pub, one of my favorite places in the entire town to go. In fact, I was just there a couple of days ago. I probably go there maybe once a week or so. Real small, nice little vibe, but phenomenal food, and their drink choices are pretty solid as well. And for those of you with family life, what does that look like? Well, it's splash pads and bike trails and going stand-up paddle boarding and heading into Blue Water Marina and listening to a live band. It's all of these cool things that you get to do with your family. And then, of course, there are events like concerts in the park, at the Landing in Fort Walton Beach every single Friday, almost every single Friday. I know every once in a while they swap it up. But they do concerts in the Landing on Friday. You've got things like the Mullet Festival, which was, it was canceled again. It's not mullets like the hair, although you'll see a lot of people wearing mullet wigs and stuff. It's actually about a fish here in our area called the mullet. It's a very bony fish. I got it one time. I got like a nice to put the whole fish on there. I don't cut off the head or the tail or nothing for you. It's weird. And I'm just digging just little toothpick-sized bones out. But it was delicious, don't get me wrong, but it's a whole festival around this. We've got a country concert that's happening at all times with some big, big names in the past, too. We've had Jason Aldean. That's the one that always sticks in my head, but we've gotten a lot of others as well. And then it's like a fair. You get fair food and those, all the games you can win prizes and things like that. Then you've got other events like Smoke on the Coast, where some of the best restaurants in our area and even individuals smoke their pork butts and whatever else and feed it to the community. And there's contests, and you've got, Brew Fest and Beer Fest and Craftathon. Those are 3 different beer events in this area. There's wine festivals and seafood festivals. There's just always something going on in Destin. And so even though it's a slower pace of life, it's a very intentional pace of life here. And even though all of that stuff is really great, there are still some downfalls. So reality number 7, we're going to talk about weather, hurricane, and sunny days. The weather here in the Destin, Florida area is 90% dream and 10% stress. And so let's talk about that. Here in Florida, we have approximately 226 sunny days per year. That's basically every workday. There's about 240 work days, I believe, is what I've always been told. So this is like every day you go to work, it's perfectly sunny, and on the weekends, maybe it's not. There's some showers or what have you. That's how often the sun is out here, and that's pretty awesome. That vitamin D is very good for us. As long as you don't get too much. I get a little bit too much sometimes. I'm always worried about getting burned out here. So if you're a little bit more lighter pigmented like me, keep some sunscreen around. You'll thank me for that. The summer's here about 85 to 95 degrees with very humid weather. So it's going to feel hotter. I know a lot of times you come from places with dry heat and you're like, oh, 105 doesn't seem that bad. It's bad, but not that bad. Sometimes here 95 feels like 6 million because it's so humid. We're practically swimming in the air here. But then our winters are very mild, typically between 50 and 70 degrees. Right now it's early November. It's almost mid-November now by the time I'm shooting this. And it's 78 when I came up to the office this morning at 9 in the morning, 78 degrees, right? 76, something like that. And so mild winters, right? Now we're not fully in it yet. I'm thinking we're supposed to get a cold front here pretty soon, but we'll see how that goes. We do have a couple of weeks every year where it gets just insanely cold, 30s and 40s, stuff humans were not designed to live in. I know some of you guys are coming from the north or, in colder areas going 40s is rough to you. Yeah, 40s is rough. I don't even own a parka, okay? I've got a hoodie. That's the heaviest jacket I've got because I've been in Florida so long. Another thing about Florida is that afternoon showers are normal. We always say if you don't like the weather here in Florida, just wait 10 minutes and it'll go away. And so whenever you become a local here, you'll end up kind of planning around your beach days around this weather. You'll look at it and go, hey, it's going to have a 20-minute shower here in about an hour. Let's wait a little bit to go. And then that way you can dodge that little afternoon shower. But now we move into hurricanes, and this is where it bothers a lot of people, or it just worries you a little bit. If you've never been through a hurricane or lived in an area with a hurricane or even tornadoes, something semi-comparable, it can definitely be daunting. But here's the thing. Tornadoes happen randomly and quick sometimes in certain parts of the country. Same with earthquakes. There's no warning. With hurricanes, we have all the warning in the world. We know about 9 days out. The spaghetti models will start to go in and we're starting to watch it. 7 days out, we've got a pretty good idea. 5 days out, it's narrowed down. 3 days out, if we need to, we escape out of town. Lucky for us, though, Destin, Florida does not get hit that often. Knock on wood. It is very rare for the hurricane to come all the way up and at them, all the way through like this. So that's why you generally see a lot of the hurricane damage in South Florida versus up here. But we are 100% equipped to deal with it. Our houses are built differently here to withstand these winds. And so it does help us a little bit. Now in a category 5, something insane, really big hurricane, something like that, there's definitely going to be damage. But again, we're so lucky here that we don't get hit all that often. In fact, the last big hurricane that did any real serious damage on the masses, there were some smaller ones that did onesie, twosies, but on the masses was in 2005, and before that in the 1980s. You can kind of see the spread there. But the big thing I want to point out here is that you have plenty of notice and you can just leave. In fact, we've got entire evacuation zones where the government will tell you, or the weather channels will tell you, I don't even think it's the government, I think it's just weather channels telling you, hey, we're in this flood zone now, go ahead and get out of there. And if you're in one of those flood zones, they'll actually come through. If you should have left, I've heard that sometimes the cops will come through and they'll knock on doors and just tell people in case, for whatever reason, you didn't get the memo, even though everybody is generally talking about it. You know how people talk about the weather during hurricane season here? We're talking about hurricanes. And speaking of hurricane season, for us, it's June to November, with the peak being August, September, and October. So here's some prep tips if you decide to move down here. Get a hurricane kit, throw in flashlights, throw in extra batteries, some dry food, get a generator if you feel so inclined, and get some shutters and stuff for your house. Just make sure your property is ready to be hurricane proofed in the event that we do have something come and hit us. And then make sure that you're always staying in the know with some of our local services like Okaloosa Emergency Management, or my buddy Jared over at Get the Coast. It's sort of an independent news organization that he runs, and it's become wildly popular over the years. In fact, I'm pretty sure at this point he's more popular than our daily news area, our daily news station out here as well. All right, now that we're done talking about the hurricane and the weather and all of that great stuff, let's talk about reality number 8, which is growth and development. What's changing? What's changing in the area? So the Emerald Coast is absolutely booming, has been for quite a while, especially some of the areas right around Destin. Destin's landlocked. You know, it's what it is, right? But with an area that is booming, with an area that is happening, if you will, that comes with frustration. There's good things with it, but it comes with a little bit of frustration too, because nobody likes the construction going on in their hometown. But let's look at some of the major developments happening between 2025 and 2026. First off, Freeport's entire commercial corridor is starting to explode. Publix and medical offices and real estate offices, just all the things. The commercial corridor in general is starting to really grow, which is great because they're getting a lot of people down there. As I said before, it is by a tremendous margin more booming in Freeport than any other area from Pensacola to Panama City Beach, which is the area we service. Which, by the way, if you want to reach out to us, I'm going to throw up all of my information up on the screen right here. You can call or text, email us, what have you, if you'd like to get more information about any of these other areas. Then the Destin Commons is constantly adding new businesses to that little shopping center. And 98 is widening in certain areas. Bloody 98, as we called it before. Well, actually, I may not have called it Bloody 98. That's what we call it. That's what we call Highway 98, by the way. Bloody 98. It's not that bloody, but it's just, you know how an area is. But point is, it's starting to widen, and then we're even doing some bridge projects. In fact, a lot of the bridges are getting updates and repairs, but one in particular from Destin going into Fort Walton Beach, so Okaloosa Island into Fort Walton, that one is being completely rebuilt. They're building another one right next to the old one. Then they're going to demolish the old one, going to change a bunch of roads around. So there's infrastructure happening, and that causes delays with traffic. So although it's a good thing long term, it can kind of infuriate us right now. Although right now we're not noticing any change whatsoever from the bridge, but 98 in certain areas does slow things down. But the really good news with this is growth means appreciation. Here's an example. Freeport has seen a 38% increase in appreciation since 2020. Now, in all fairness, our entire area blew up pretty good right after COVID. So we saw appreciation everywhere, as did most of the country, Florida included. But 38% in 5 years is pretty incredible. Just think if you would have paid $500,000 for a house back then, and it's worth 38% more already, I'll let you do the math. I think that's a good time to shift from reality 8 to reality 9, which is mindset shift. How you go from being a tourist to a local. Here's how it looks. In the first 3 months that most people live here, you're a tourist. You do the tourist things. You go to Crab Island, and depending on what time of year you move here, obviously, and you do all the things, and you're going to big kahunas, and you're taking the family out to great dinners, and just all the great stuff. And then, of course, by month 6, you're starting to settle in a little bit. You're starting to see the patterns. You're starting to realize when you can leave the house and when you should probably stick to and let the traffic die down. You start to realize that Publix on a Saturday is maddening. Publix is one of our grocery stores. They've got amazing subs, okay? You can go get all your groceries and then get a pub sub. It's a big thing around here. People really love them. I'm not near as big of a fan as I think most Floridians are. They're great. They're good. Don't get me wrong. But I'd take Jimmy John's over a pub sub all day. I said it. And what happens after about 6 months is you start valuing certain things over other things. In the first couple of months, you're good waiting in line for something. You're good waiting in traffic with something. After a little bit, you start valuing that quietness over the chaos, right? You start valuing the quick commutes versus the longer ones to get to your destination. You'll hold off on that dinner a little bit. And eventually the beaches are for the weekdays instead of the weekends. I know that seems backwards, but it's a little less packed on a weekday, especially during the off season. So that tends to be when we try to sneak out there. I know people that go every single day after work because going in the evening time is a little bit easier. Watching the sunset over the water is definitely a pretty cool experience you should do way more than once. And once you start figuring out all of those things, that's when your language starts changing from, well, yeah, we moved to Destin to, yeah, we live here full time. And there is a difference. And reality number 10, the one that I wanted to save all the way until the end is the dream still worth it? Like I told you guys before, I moved a lot around in my life. I had dozens of places, over a dozen at least, probably not dozens, probably not plural, dozens, but at least 12, 15 different places. And out of all of the places I decided to hang my hat when I got out of the military and became a real estate professional, I didn't move for a reason. This place is incredible. I can stay in this area and have a different lifestyle and vibe every couple of years if I want. If I want to live in Fort Walton for a little bit and be kind of near my military family members and friends and stuff like that, I can absolutely do that. If I want to go enjoy the nightlife of Destin for a couple of years, I can go get a condo right there in Destin. If I want to go into 30A and go into more of a romantic, like sort of feeling, tight-knit neighborhood with farmers markets and beautiful like candlelit streets, and I'm going to go to Rosemary Beach in 30A. Like the vibes are so completely different that I'll never get bored in the area. So let's talk about, is that dream worth it or not? First and foremost, it's expensive. I'm sure we're under the national average in most of our cities around Destin, but Destin itself is a little bit pricey and it's super touristy for a good portion of the year. And so those are two pretty big drawbacks. But it's also peaceful, particularly in the areas surrounding Destin. It's stunningly beautiful. And you've got a sense of real community here that I've seen in other places, but here it's a very tight-knit community, and I really like it. And a lot of the locals end up staying for the same reason I ended up staying. It's the slower pace of life. It's the sense of safety, the sense of family, the access to nature and the water. About the only thing that I think we're missing here is real mountains to hike. I went to Vermont one time and did a pretty awesome hike, beautiful views by the time I went up. And then I visited my sister in Washington. And we just don't have hiking like that, at least in our area. We do have a little bit of hills up at Crestview, but it's nothing like Vermont or Washington. At the end of the day, if you want perfection, this isn't it. But if you want peace, you want a slower pace of lifestyle with beauty surrounding it and access to all the great things, well, it's hard to beat. If you're serious about relocating here and maybe Destin isn't the one, or you just want to learn about our entire area, I've got a free 38-page guide for you. I'm going to pop it up right here on the screen. If you're watching in your TV, just take a picture of this QR code right here. If you're on your phone, go into the description, and there's a link right there. It's a 38-page guide. I'll go over each of the areas in depth, and it's got some cool calculators and checklists and things like that, just for your knowledge. And I'll give you a pretty good overview, or of course, you can subscribe to this channel. And you can come back every single week. We do videos Tuesday at 4 p.m. every single week. I don't think we've missed one in 4 years probably. So that's when we're doing them. And you can come back and get all of the information about the Emerald Coast that you'd like. And when you're ready to reach out, my team and I will be ready. We've got a specialist in every area from Pensacola to Panama City Beach, including the inland towns like Freeport and Niceville that I mentioned before. So we've got a specialist for you. So go ahead and reach out to us. You can call, text, or email, or of course find us online, especially if you guys like bloopers and things like that, kind of behind the scenes. Find us online on social media, Facebook, Instagram, stuff like that, and you can get into that. I really appreciate you guys watching, and if for any reason you made it this far into the video, which was way longer than I expected, by the way, I kind of apologize for that, but I'm hoping some of this information was useful. I'd love for you to put down in the comment section exactly which part either surprised you or is a turn off for you that you're going, I don't know about that now. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comment section down below. I'll see you guys next week, Tuesday at 4 p.m. See ya.